Hey everybody, it's Robert Dunt from ArtTop10.com, and I'm really excited to be here today with John Talbot, who is, well, as I've just been finding out, an extraordinary art collector and particularly fascinated with Ken Kiff.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say Ken Kiff is your major obsession with painting.
It is a major obsession. yeah.
So for people who don't know that much about Ken Kiff, and obviously there's an absolutely stunning one behind us, just tell us a little bit about him. He was primarily a painter?
Yeah, he was primarily a painter. He was, I suppose, came to general knowledge probably in the 1960s when he was painting sort of large paintings like this, which is also from the 60s. And then in the 1970s he did a body of work called The Sequence, which I guess we'll be talking about. And that was largely his output in the 70s, and in the 80s he did a further work, and I think during the 80s he became very well known as a teacher. He was teaching at the Royal College and at Chelsea, and he was very influential in the art scene at that time. And then he was an artist in residence at the National Gallery in the early 90s, but then he seemed to really lose his way in terms of people, in terms of public recognition, and I suppose that was with the onset of the YBAs, and also I think his career just seemed to plateau at that point, and then Ken died sort of a couple of years into the beginning, I think 2001 or so. And has been, I think, largely forgotten by many people during that period.
I mean, like you said, I'd heard of him, but I didn't know a huge amount about him, and obviously today I've obviously learned a lot more. And I mean, certainly for me, what I find interesting is that while there is a sort of, I suppose you can explain much better than me, but there's kind of narrative drama within them, there's also the visually stunning when you first look at them. I mean, is that the kind of thing that first attracted you to them?
And I mean, it's really odd, I suppose. I never met Ken Kiff. I got interested in his work during the 90s, and that was really through other artists. There's a number of other artists whose work I really like, who were talking about Ken. In particular, there's an artist called Chris Appleby whose work I really love, and Chris was sort of insisting I look at Ken Kiff. I mean, Chris thinks he's absolutely brilliant. And a number of other artists that I sort of know also were very enthusiastic about them, people like Graham Crowley, and so I think must have been in the early 90s I bought a painting of his, and I actually bought it at auction, and lived with it a while, and gradually started to like it more and more. Initially, I liked that particular painting, but to be frank, I wasn't that knocked out. Sort of back then, I thought it was sort of rather over complex, and although I liked the colours within it, but having lived with that and then bought one or two more and seen other work, it gradually grew on me until it sort of
became the obsession. I mean, I really like. I think it's fascinating. I think you get one of these paintings and then it grows and builds. Because initially you bought more like abstract work.
I've got I like abstract work and really enjoy abstract work. And I suppose I think looking at Ken Kiff, you can actually read it in different ways. I mean, it's really interesting because I knew Michael Harrison really well, who was the director at Kettle's Yard, and Michael sort of talked to me about Ken Kiff, and he knew him really well. Unfortunately, Michael's also died, but Michael explained that Ken Kiff considered himself an abstract painter, which is really slightly odd when you look at the work that he produced. But the colours are absolutely utterly amazing within them, and you can actually enjoy them just from the point of view of the colour, like something like this. So the colour is.
You come in the room, it blows you away. Like, I know, but it's not only blows you away with the colour, then you've got the gigantic head, the other smaller head. What was this one called? This
is Talking to a Psychoanalyst.
Talking to a Psychoanalyst, and that kind of there's themes would you say within them, like the Psychoanalyst?
Yeah, I think this was really from a period when obviously he was dealing with psychoanalysis, and this painting is called that, but then really when you start to look at the sequence, there's an awful lot of references to psychoanalysis within the sequence, and I gather that Ken did have psychoanalysis for much of his life, so it was obviously something that was very very day to day for him.
Yeah, exactly. So just for people who don't know about the sequence, you just want to explain what that was in Ken's.
I've never had the benefit of talking to him, but obviously I've read quite a lot about him, and also talked to a lot of people that knew him, and I think it's very obvious when you look at the paintings, a number of the paintings from the 60s, they were quite heavily worked, and I understand that he was very rarely sort of totally satisfied with the painting, and would want to rework paintings, continue to add to paintings, and was very, very reluctant to see them leave the studio. In fact, I think they had to be practically private. And then I don't know exactly why, but in the early 70s he started to do the thing that became the sequence, where he started producing work on paper, using acrylic on paper, and he was producing work very, very quickly. For him, like I understand, he would produce a painting in a day or something, and they have a sort of an immediacy. They're all numbered, and so the sequence, he produced them. I think there was a bulk of his output during the 70s. He did other things as well, but they were the major thing he produced, and so there were up towards 200 of them, and they're things that are produced immediately, and they seem to deal with day-to-day issues in his life, trying to, I suspect, resolve things in the best way he knew how, which was through painting that were going on for him.
Because I think it was quite interesting, because something I read was talking about how it was almost like your mind has fantasies that it rolls through all the time, trying to work out, like you say, day-to-day things, and potentially the sequence is bringing those fantasies onto the paper. Do you think there's an...
I think there must be an element that must be a major part of it, because he was brilliant as a painter and as a draftsman, and that would be how he would resolve things for himself, as well as producing work that would be interesting to other people. I mean, if he was a poet, then he would be writing poetry about the things that really concerned him, and resolving things. But the way he expressed himself was through painting, and so I think it was I guess that's what was going on. One of the things that was going on.
Actually, it's really interesting. Actually, I didn't realise that as you were saying that. It's quite interesting if he couldn't let go of the big sort of oil paintings on canvas and wanted to keep working at them, that then suddenly going into these things on paper gave him a new lease of life.
I think it did, and I think it, from what I've read and heard, that it sort of he found it incredibly refreshing to be able to do that and to produce them. And as I think when you read about what he said at the time, or after he completed the sequence, he always envisaged it having there being a sort of completion, or even if it's not a completion, there being a finite number within the sequence, but that was never really finished. There are sequence paintings that are unfinished that sort of Anna, his daughter, has that weren't finished, and I think he carried on working beyond the 70s on some of the pieces. But one thing that's strange about them, they were really important to him. That's clear from what he's written, and so they were things. So you comment this thing about letting them go, and I know he didn't let things like this go very easily from his studio, but clearly he did with the sequence, because they got dispersed very quickly. He never saw them all together. I mean, they were sold. Lots of them were sold through the States. He had a dealer in New York who sold an awful lot of them to collectors in the US. So there's never been a complete show of them all, and it would be really hard to get them all together for a show. I think the most would have been, he had a huge retrospective at the Serpentine in the 80s, where they showed about 90 of his works, and it was sort of incredibly successful. retrospective, and within that I think there were like sort of 45 or 50 paintings from the sequence that were pulled together. So that's probably the most that's ever been publicly seen at any one time.
And I mean, you've obviously got quite a few. The sequence is your sort of passion within the Ken Kiff.
It was, It's really, again, I've not got a particularly good record in terms of identifying things I'm going to like in the long term in many areas, but particularly with painting, but particularly with Ken Kiff, because I mean, the sequence was the thing I first encountered and then gradually got to love. And actually, I mean, I know it seems slightly bizarre, but I didn't really like things like this until.
That's the fascinating thing about being a sort of genuine collector, in that you're growing with the work in a way, I suppose.
Yeah, or you're learning about it and becoming enthusiastic about it when you're sort of lucky enough to have the opportunity to live with it or to see it regularly, and it sort of grows on you. You realise how wonderful these paintings are.
And you are helping. There is going to be an exhibition with quite a few of yours, isn't there, coming up soon?
We've been trying to sort of working with Anna, his daughter, because basically after Ken died, there was there's been no public show, practically no public shows of his work, and so we've been trying to get a show together so people can see the work in a public context. And unfortunately, there's going to be a show at the Sainsbury Centre later this year. The exact content of the show isn't agreed, but I think it's going to include it's going to be focused around the sequence, I understand, and a lot of the work that I've collected, but other important pieces that other people have and work from the estate will be included as well.
Oh, it sounds fascinating. I'm really looking forward to it. So I think we should have a wander around and have a look. So just before we head off, is there? I mean, it's a sort of silly question in a way, but is there any one thing you could kind of define down about why you find them so fascinating? Or
I don't know. I suppose sometimes I think it's the fact that he was struggling to understand things, and I really like that aspect of it, which I think is in a way is probably quite unfashionable to have narrative painting that does that and sort of exposes yourself in that way. But that's something I like about them. But that's not. It's not just that. I think it's also sometimes I just like the colour. The colour is utterly amazing, and if you and so I just enjoy the colour, and then you sort of juxtapose the colour, and there's really interesting content as well. So, and also the things don't change. Although there's something that within the sequence that you look at a painting and you pretty much know it's from the sequence. You can recognise it, and there's something about them that follows through. Everyone's really quite different when you look at it in that way too. So there is regularity, there is a sort of pattern. They are part of a. I mean, he considered them to be one work. Individual, and so you see that within them, but individually they also look distinctive and different.
I know they do. They are fascinating actually, and like you said, they are distinctive, and I totally respond, as you say, to the colour, and then it sort of sucks you in, and then there's more and more within that.
And you also start to see sort of elements of the images that get repeated, and so you can't help as a sort of, if you start to get obsessed with the things, they start seeing those sort of aspects that repeat themselves, and some of them are lighter and sort of almost appear sort of quite humorous, and others are sort of heavy and quite dark and worrying.
Oh, cool. Well, let's go and have a look at you.
Although the paintings in the sequence were much simpler, and he finished them much more rapidly than he had been doing with the large painting from the 60s, they did change. This is, for instance, is quite an early one. It's sort of number 9 in the sequence, and as you can see that the figure's quite realistic. The figure, probably a self-portrait of him sitting on the chair, and there's much sort of less detail, it's much less work than the later images, whereas this is, for instance, a somewhat later picture from the sequence, and again you get the impression of an awful lot more work. I mean, it's some people would find it as a more difficult subject, but
it's an extraordinary painting. Isn't it?
yeah, it's an extraordinary painting. James Fisher's just written about it in Terps Banana, because he's written an article on humour in Ken Kiff's paintings, and he's sort of zoned in on this one, which I can see why, really.
Absolutely.
This is a sort of quite a different image, but again, you got that sense of a lot more work on the image, the sort of typing in the garden.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because as you say, that the early ones have that sort of more sparseness, and then this one has got a much more it's filled in. And also, I just find it extraordinary typing in the garden. What an extraordinary idea to put into the picture.
But again, so you've got elements that we've been talking about, the sort of the relationship between the two, the sort of, you look at it from a figurative point of view, the puzzled look on the face, but then you just look at it as a piece of, if you try to look at it as a piece of abstract art almost, the colours are just utterly amazing.
The colours are wonderful. I mean, that incredibly strong orange down the side of the face. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's brilliant. And then I love the typing. It makes me laugh, but it's also slightly bizarre.
Yeah, and there are elements in it that recur in a lot of the sort of the building, the blocky building, the tree. You see in an awful lot of the images, and some of the colours are repeated. And it's interesting, that sort of orange on the face, because that's almost reflected in this piece, which it's called The Poet.
The Poet.
Man by the Window, or Poet by the Window. It's 104, so it's a later image, but it's got that amazing sort of yellow on the side of it.
It has got the amazing yellow on the side of it. It's such a, I mean, and you go from one that's so, it's got all those beautiful greys, but then it's got that extraordinary, it's like a piece of rope running down the side of the head.
I think it's called Old Man by the Window. I need to check, but I got it from New York, and Ken's dealer in New York mentioned that it was actually the representation of a poet. Apparently, I love it. I love that sort of that yellow and the green on an orange on the head, but also this sort of really muddy background. And I think he sort of. He's great at painting with muddy colours.
And it's actually quite interesting, if you look at that one in the corner, this bright one down here with the sort of giant dolphin. Because remember, you were saying earlier you weren't sure you liked that one.
No, because I got this. There were 3 paintings that came up at auction I think in New Jersey, and this was one of them. And I didn't initially like it. I liked the other 2 paintings, but I thought this was a bit of a pastiche and sort of over complex, and then you sort of put it on the wall, and within about 3 weeks you think it's amazing. I mean, it starts to, things grow on you. But it is an unusual painting, because there's sort of elements you recognise from other pieces of work. I mean, that figure occurs in another painting particularly this old man on with the walking stick, and the sense of arrival is something that occurs a great deal. I love the snail.
Oh, I hadn't seen the snail before. He's absolutely brilliant.
Anna, his daughter's got this amazing sketchbook where he's drawn in the sketchbook about 8 portraits of just sketchy little portraits, and in one of them there's a snail. So there's about 8 portraits and a snail, and then he's put in 2 matchstick men turning up, which is on the page, and the matchstick man that represents him presumably is saying, "You can have anyone you want," and then it puts in brackets, "Please don't take the snail." It's incredible.
So tell us about, the one with the crazy pink in the centre.
This is a sort of much heavier painting. Called Protruding Tongue. It's
the tongue's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's an incredible piece of work. I just love it. It's relatively late, 165 in the sequence. So sort of, and again, very a lot more work going into it, and possibly rework. But it's a really Beautiful image. I love these sort of figures emerging from figures.
Oh, the figures are amazing.
I like the chair back as well.
Oh yeah,
The
the chair back is really interesting because that's scratched out.
Yeah.
So it's quite a different sort of technique amongst the rest of it. It's really cool. And this is another one that's quite a sort of heavier.
Yeah, this is a sort of a much more serious one, really. It's called Walking My Dead Father, because his father was killed in an air raid in the Second World War, so I'm sure there are references to that within it. But it's a beautiful thing. And this figure occurs, the figure in a cave occurs in a number of his paintings, sort of hiding away, lurking, and then you get this sort of amazing figures where sort of you get sort of figures changing direction going along the side of the painting.
Well, you have got the most extraordinary, because I find just extraordinary. What is that bit at the top? It's like a sort of
it's a diamond shape that actually he uses as a motif in a number of paintings.
Because it is in one art. It's one of the other ones, isn't it? Absolutely extraordinary.
In this case, replacing the head and sort of like a childlike figure and a slightly older figure maybe sitting on top of it. Yeah. It's very touching.
It is.
Should we
go back to this one?
I wasn't sure about this one as well. I love ballet. I used to be chairman of English National Ballet, and so I couldn't resist this one, which is called Ballet Dancer. I didn't. Again, it's one of the ones that sort of grew on me. There's obviously sort of Matisse type references within it, sort of elements of caricature and everything else, but it actually really works. Again, it's sort of. It grows on you.
Oh, it does, absolutely. And I think as I was chatting earlier, I find it absolutely extraordinary that nose touches the leg.
Yeah.
It's just every time there's always seems to be something in there that unsettles your normal viewing of the world in a good way.
Yeah. This one was sort of a respectable gentleman passing by a girl or something. There's a number of 100 in the sequence, and this was the first one that I bought, and it's sort of the one that, I suppose started the whole obsession really with Ken Kiff, and particularly the sequence. When I bought it, I bought it at auction. I had no idea the sequence existed as far as I was concerned. Chris Appleby had been telling me how wonderful Ken Kiff was, and I really should look at some Ken Kiff, and so I think we actually probably went to the auction together and got that, and then I liked it, but then you sort of liked it more and more as time went on, and then started to read a bit about the sequence, and gradually
you grew from that. And then you when we were chatting earlier, you spoke very interestingly about this one down here.
This one is, it's called Anxiety, and there's anxiety.
As you say, it's scrawled
into it. I think as a painting, it's probably. I don't think it's such a good painting as some of the other paintings in the sequence. I think it's quite realistic, isn't it, in terms of the imagery, and I'm not sure it works, but I think it's a mega important painting in the sequence, because I think this whole thing about anxiety is something that's a key part of the sequence and what's going on in the sequence, and it's almost probably a bit of a key to the sequence in a way. It has elements of the typical craziness, the flag, the hand coming out of the head with a flag with a sort of Carly-like figure on it, and the strange figure in the bottom corner.
Oh, I hadn't seen the strange figure in the bottom corner. That's brilliant. Yeah. I love the green figure. It looks a bit like a crazy chimp.
Yeah,
but it's just.
I think it's. Again, it is an extraordinary painting.
Yeah. And then there's a
gushing stream with the talking fish or whatever. Yeah. Again, it's sort of slightly. It's like a theatre set in a desert. Almost, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Sort of like the stage curtains almost, and then this sort of rather dubious-looking stream.
Yeah, dubious-looking stream.
With a talking fish.
Yeah, with a talking fish. And as you say, different things reappear, like the heads and the torsos.
Yeah, you often get the heads and the torsos appearing. And the talking fish again.
Yes, the talking fish. Wait, the talking fish. And actually, in the horses reappear, don't they?
You do see, yeah.
And then we've got these two.
Yeah, these are two
smaller
sequence. One's called Portrait, and this is called, I think, Girl, Boat, and River, or something. Girl, Boat, and Tree. It's sort of quite a delicate thing. This is sort of fairly unusual in that it is sort of a sequence. It's 77 in the sequence, and that's 61. And this is really heavily worked. There's so much paint gone on. So it looks as though it's been repainted, which is fairly unusual, isn't it? Because it has been reframed and it's really heavy with paint.
Actually, it's very good because they're all acrylic, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all acrylic.
It's interesting to see them. So
yeah, they're all sort of. What he did, he stretched them, stretched the paper onto hardboard with this sort of tape. But then he would paint over the tape, and the tape almost becomes part of the image, and then he'd cut them off, I gather, with a razor, so that to take them off the hardboard when they'd finished. But it's quite often you see them and they're actually framed like a watercolour with a mount over the tape, and I think in a way when you take that away it sort of liberates them, and I think that was, I'm told, Chris Appleby talked to him quite a lot about framing, and I gather that was really important to him. The edges were very important. Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant when you were talking earlier about how you'd often get them, and they were framed like watercolours.
Yeah,
the edges were hidden.
Yeah, then you sort of take the mount away, and they got pow, and they sort of come to life. That's really amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. This is one of Chris's paintings, and Chris Appleby, who introduced me to the world of Ken Kiff. Chris produces really beautiful paintings.
Yeah, they're really cool. They're very nice. They've got a sort of influence, but they're still their own. Their own thing.
Yeah. And this is a room with rather a lot of Ken Kiff.
Well, oh wow, look at that! Because and then you've got up here like what's the blue one called with the floating head and the floating tree? I hadn't noticed that tree.
It's called head above water, I think.
But it's, when you look at something like that, especially when you're living with it on a daily basis, what do you sort of, what does it do to you?
I think with this one, it's. I suppose I really like the colour in this image, but you constantly sort of see things like, it took me ages to actually realise there's a foot sort of lurking at the bottom here, emerging from this sort of hill.
I hadn't seen that foot either.
And then you've got what's happening here is someone painting or drawing, and then this is a look again. You think it's a sort of a hill or an element of landscape slightly in a slightly strange way, but then you realise there's a window and there's a door, so it's actually a building. But is it a building?
Because as you said, those buildings reappear, don't they?
Yeah. Quite often you get buildings within them. And then this is this one it's called Words. It's 132. It's almost like a compendium of sort of elements from, in many ways, elements from other paintings. You quite often get this sort of detached head on its side, and the torso, the tree appears. But the colours in this are much not. You do get those colours within the sequence, but it's quite rare to get a painting entirely in those colours. That's more subdued, but very beautiful. I can't quite work out with this. It's amazing. It looks like an oyster or something.
Well, no, exactly.
Absolutely beautiful.
I was thinking it looks a little bit like a squid.
That's exactly. Yeah, similar idea. These are really lovely paintings.
These are great
references probably to Van Gogh, aren't there?
Exactly, with the chair. But there it is. There's that head again.
Yeah.
So you've pretty much got it in all three of these pictures.
Yeah.
You've got the head everywhere.
Yeah. I love the bird and sort of lurking in the tree, looking at, and this sort of woman almost sort of radiating heat. This one came from San Francisco. It was bought by founders of a gallery in San Francisco.
Okay.
It's I think it's a really, really beautiful image. Graham Crowley's written a bit about it and sort of indicate, Graham sees the horses probably coming from Poole Station.
Yeah, no.
Then you got the you get this image of a hidden figure and a beautiful woman, like I suppose Diana and Hunter and the huntress being spied upon, and is it Diana and Actaeon? And also you got the rival, and sort of lots of, I suppose, sexual illusions as well coming in.
It is though, when you're studying, it's just really beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite lush, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lush. It's lush. I mean, it's got a real sort of lustre and colour to it.
Again, you've got the tree, the hidden bit, and then a building in the landscape.
And you've got the building.
The sky's quite amazing, isn't it? The
sky's brilliant. It's just brilliant. You've got all those. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I like this one, the dog in the street with
that's lovely.
Figure emerging from the wall.
Oh yeah, the figure emerging from the wall is brilliant, isn't it? Because you really does
the dog's slightly cartoony for him, isn't it? Typically,
because it's still got a but even when it's cartoony, it's still got an element of something slightly disturbing about it. In a good way.
Maybe, yeah.
This
is really nice. This is number 2 in the sequence, so it's like mega early. Again, you've got that sort of looseness, and you can just believe it was done very, very quickly. It's got an amazing title. It's called 1 Foot Energy, 1 Foot in the Dustbin.
Yeah, that is a brilliant title. It's just... You've got all the brilliant things. Again, you've got the horse, you've got
you've got the horse going up a hill. You've got a sort of detached head. You got a sort of crazy figure. You got amazing colours.
You've got amazing colours. Because some of them, like that, they're just sort of. I just react to them in a really positive fashion.
Yeah.
You just sort of feel refreshed when you look at them.
Yeah.
And then
I've always liked the one at the top is. It's called Gardener.
Oh wow! Oh yeah, this is an interesting because because it's so fascinating. You go from that really bright one to one like this, which is more sort of, I suppose you could say, muted or something. But that lovely.
But you've got sort of a cadmium orange or something up there that's sort of burning through. And I love the way the dog changes colour across the footpath.
Exactly.
And the cloud lurking over the tree.
Oh, yes, I hadn't realised actually the dog literally changes colour over the footpath.
Yeah.
I love the way the dog changes colour. just draws you through it.
And this is Donkey.
I hadn't looked at him properly. It's really good. Oh, it's such a sort of happy donkey.
It's one of the ones that sort of Anna, Ken's daughter, has lent me because she's lent me a few that because quite a few people come just to. If you want to see Ken Kiffs, it's quite hard to actually see them. So a few people come to see them, and so she wanted to have it was really good to have a few. Some elements of the sequence that otherwise wouldn't be here. This one is utterly amazing. This is this is Anna's. It's called Death. I think I've seen it referred to as Death in the Family, but I think it's utterly stunning. The sort of body lying, and then these figures just expressing such tenderness, and then you got this amazing black shape. This is quite different, you see. This is quite early again. This is number 16, and it's really sort of classical, isn't it?
And you've got the person emerging through the trees at the back.
Again, it's like the classical mythology, isn't it, of the
it is. I keep the
goddess being spied upon. Probably getting to recognise it. This being an early one again. Because it's quite sparsely painted. It's when the figures are quite realistic, or the figure, which is presumably a self-portrait.
That is interesting, isn't it? Those early ones, his sort of version of himself is recognisable, but you've still got, like you say, you've still got things like the head. That little man.
Oh, you've got all the stuff going on at the side, the head on its side, and figures emerging, and like someone drowning in a pool or whatever is going on. And you've got a tree with a
beautiful tree,
beautiful purpley blue trunk. So it's sort of the unlikely elements and the sort of fantasy elements, but you've got quite a realistic aspect, and it's quite sparsely painted. Yet I think it works really, really well.
Oh yeah, it works. It does work very well.
And that just and the colours and the faces.
Oh, the colours. It's like those lovely, like that lovely green. It just really pops it out.
Yeah.
And now behind you, we've got this.
Yeah, that triptych, which is sort of a bit on the
extraordinary, isn't it?
really, yeah.
Look at that.
It's a National Gallery triptych.
And that's
He did it when he was artist in residence at the National Gallery in 92, 92.
It's a fascinating painting. And as I think you were saying earlier, it sort of progresses along, doesn't it? So in the far left.
He did, I think, probably about five triptychs and triplets, and they always have this sort of. They tend to have a similar progression through with this panel, which probably represents a journey or something. There's a house here with the door and I don't know if that's a rock or a waterfall or whatever, but you have that and the sun, and then you have a sort of quite a dark panel in the middle, and sometimes I think that on one of the triptychs there's a skull and a sort of skull-like figure.
Okay, so you've definitely got a real sort of that's like the sort of
like classical
Dark Night of the Soul section.
Yeah, and then this sort of beautiful.
You come around to
right. One of the things that's really nice about this is just it almost sort of it's so cut back. If you look, it's so cut back into that tree is just basically where it's at the sky.
Yeah, when you come
back
close,
into the hardboard,
you can see it is actually just on hardboard, which is quite extraordinary actually to have got.
It just really hangs together, doesn't it? It hangs together in an amazing way.
It's interesting actually looking at it from a distance. Initially I thought it had a sort of Garden of Eden feel to it, but it's actually also got that sort of black shadow of the woman in there as well, which I hadn't really clocked before. But I guess that's the beauty of spending time with them. You see all these different things. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really serious
good
piece of work. This is a really interesting one. I think it's called A Healing Snake in I can't remember if it's a London Underground carriage or London carriage, but it was Michael Harrison. It was one of his favourites. He really liked this one when he talked about them.
He's absolutely extraordinary, that picture. It's not every day you see a giant green snake emerging from somebody in the London Underground.
It's called Talking to a Psychoanalyst in the Night Sky. There's so much going on in it, really. Quite often there's a debate as to who is the psychoanalyst and who's the client, and I think it's pretty clear that this is the client. It does look apparently quite a lot like, it does look a lot like Ken Kiff, and so he's done the psychoanalyst more or less as a sort of as a cipher, or as a sort of.
It is interesting. Actually, I hadn't noticed when we were looking at it earlier. As you say, that there's a weird division. The psychoanalyst is a sort of dark black.
Yeah, it's almost a shadow, or it's almost not there, just a reflection of the. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. It's a reflection of the person himself.
Yeah, possibly. Or.
Then also, I hadn't noticed earlier. You've got that saw. It's almost like a division between them on the floor.
It is, but you've got the other tools.
And then you've got the other tools.
Hammer and then the fork, and you can start to read things into that. I think his father worked in a sawmill or worked as a carpenter or something.
Okay.
So it could be reference to that, but it probably isn't.
It probably isn't.
But I just love the demons behind it.
I was sort of obsessed. That looks like a camel, but
I think
it's like a camel, and then there's demons, and then there's people and things creeping through the door, and the feet, and there's a fork down there as well. Yeah. But as I think you were saying earlier, it's also got it's really nicely painted.
Well, it's really strange to think it's acrylic, really, which normally has that sort of quite a solid feel, and it's really translucent.
It is. It's translucent, and the paint is lovely, and it is beautifully painted as well, and I love the modelling of that sofa and the curtain.
Yeah, Graham Crowley was admiring it one afternoon, was just sort of speculating as to how he managed to get acrylic to do the things that he did on that painting to achieve that translucency. Yeah. What he must have put in it in order to achieve that, and to also presumably to get it to not dry so quickly, so you could work it. This is a painting from the 60s with paraffin stove, again, you get that you can see the differences between the work of different periods. Are so different from the sequence. That strong yellow that you saw in the Psychoanalyst that we were talking behind us when we were talking.
It's a fascinating. Actually, looking at it again, there's also something that I noticed before. Like you've got a sort of portrait photo on the top right, and then he's also looking at.
Yeah, he's looking at a painting, isn't he, or a drawing, or an image in some way.
And then there's that fire and the pair of scissors.
Yeah, paraffin stone. There's a painting I think the Tate have got where it's actually called Cutting an Image, where it's like an image, but the scissors are being used to cut into.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
Yeah. It's called Orange Man and Black Dog. That's why. Again, it's a sort of, you can see the similarities to the other paintings from the 60s. That sort of strong yellow, but sort of quite simplified figures in some way.
I'm personally just fascinated with that the under the arm section, because the green sort of builds back into the orange arm, and it's like the earth is always crawling out of the painting under it. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, it's incredibly strong.
Really amazing painting.
I like the green and then the blue and the blue and the green and the path and then the green and just that band of blue going across. The dog with the red eye.
The dog with the red eye, wonderful. Yeah. And the black and orange. The dog and the person, amazing.
It's quite interesting because you've got that from the 60s, then you've got a sequence painting here called Ascent. And there's a lot, but it's a much busier thing, and it's quite a large one for the sequence. It's reasonably far on in the sequence. It's 127, but there's so much because he was doing lots of these figures at this sort of, I suppose, almost Picasso-esque like figures, with one figure emerging from another, and sort of different, looking at figures in different ways. So there's that element which is really interesting. You quite often get this sort of lonely looking figure sitting at the top looking at the scene. You got the horse going up the hill again that we had, and so
I love the horse.
And then these strange heads progressing as well,
popping out of the mountain.
Yeah,
just amazing. No, I love this figure.
This figure was almost nothing to it.
There's nothing to it. It just appears.
Yeah,
amazing.
Stairway. And then you've got a painting a later painting from the 80s, where the painting have got more complex, and
this one visually is almost one of my favourites. I just really like the colours.
Yeah, it's all really strong.
This wasn't one of your favourites.
No, I know, I didn't. It's a sort of long story, but I bought a group of paintings together, and I just didn't really want anything other than the sequence ones, and there were several sequence paintings which I wanted to buy, but the person selling them wouldn't sell them, and they wanted to sell the lot together, and so I ended up buying this one as well, and it wasn't, I just thought this was over complex. It didn't really interest me that much, and then I stuck it on the wall, and I spent about half an hour looking at it. I couldn't believe how amazing it was, and so I don't know, I suppose it's something to do with my inability to see what's good. Initially, I don't know what it is, but after looking at it for a bit, you just gradually realise how amazing it is, and then every time now I look at it, I see new things. I mean, I love that figure. That's all that Shingali sort of bit there. And this figure here, like all this stuff where it's been scratched out, and then you've got this lady emptying stuff into the dustbin. But then, of course, you've got this amazing orange and the reflection on that beautiful figure, and the green on the side of it.
I didn't notice the green on the side very properly.
And also, and this is a sort of street painting which he was doing. He did a number of street paintings in the 80s, and you quite often get these figures with basically a bowler hat and a head and a pair of legs sort of emerging.
Oh, I haven't spotted that either. That is really good.
Oh, there's a really good one here, look.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Brilliant. Just brilliant.
Yeah.
I think I find more and more fascinating as we go around is like these heads, which initially you think could be quite strange, they become like terribly friendly little sort of figures after a while. They're sort of strangely sympathetic.
That's called Spitting Man.
Oh yeah, with the man shooting out.
It's sort of like Shigali. I know it's all Matisse-like figure, really, isn't it? And this is this is called Hublou, who's a character from a French writer, Jarre, and the Salamander. And again, you've got that sort of symbol that you notice on the
downstairs in the
walking identical. Yeah. But this is been my favourite for a long time. It's called Old Man Being Sick.
Oh yeah, this is.
And I just really. I like it in different ways, really. I like the tenderness of this sort of spirit figure coming out and just tenderly touching the old guy who's being sick. And so I think that's a really nice. But there's also this. I mean, I think it references psychoanalysis as well, with the sort of animus type, the old man, the sort of the male and the female elements.
Yeah.
But it may sound rather stupid, but sometimes I just enjoy it, just without actually trying to read it in any way, but just look at the colours, because I think the colours are bloody amazing. And if you just try and see it as an arrangement of colour, it becomes really beautiful. Yeah, this is called The Poet, or I think it's just called The Poet, but it's basically Mayakovsky. The poet Mayakovsky shooting himself. So you see this sort of explosion, but you see all the heads coming out of the head. But it's quite it could be a disturbing and sort of alarming painting, but it doesn't actually work like that when you see it regularly. It's actually it's very beautiful, and Ken Kiff, I think, at one point, there's a quote from him saying, "Oh, the poet's not really dead; it's just a bunch of flowers." But I mean, he was probably teasing someone. But I mean, you can see it as a bunch of flowers, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. But I think the interesting thing is I'd seen it online as an image, but in real life, it's dramatically different. It's very positive in a strange fashion. And the flash of that gun is so bright.
Yeah, it is.
And the eyeball flying across the side of his head.
Yeah, you could see that. Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing.
Right.
Just amazing.
It is an amazing painting.
It is an amazing painting.
This is another good one. This is called Licorice Pipe Man.
Oh, this is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of like because he numbered them all when they started, and this is number 29, and Old Man Being Sick is number 27, and it's basically the same painting almost as Old Man Being Sick. You got the same. I mean, it looks different, but it's very. There are a lot of similarities. There's a sort of spirit. Emerging, and the spirit's being really tender to someone. So again, you've got the same thing. If you look at the background colour to this and Old Man Being Sick, and they're the sort of same palette, although there's a sort of riot of colour in the middle of this. But there's also other stuff going on. It's called Licorice Pipe Man, and there's a figure emerging being formed from the pipe bowl.
I love the figure coming out of the pipe, which initially I thought was somebody being crushed by a hammer.
That sort of just shows how you look at things, doesn't it?
It's wonderful.
That's got a nice title, the one at the top. It's called Frightened of Good. There's elements on, again, you got the similar sort of colour on, haven't you, with the background, with that beautiful green that he uses. But I like the title of that, Frightened of Good.
Stroking the sun.
Yeah, but you've also they've got a sort of portrait there again that you noticed in the big one from the 60s. And you've got the spilt cup which you get, which occurs in quite a lot of them as well.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Lovely big green panel beside it, and
that's fun, isn't it? That one,
brilliant.
Sort of cow on the hill.
Interesting. And that the face actually at the bottom is that meant to be him? It does look a little bit like the early versions of him.
Yeah, I don't know. That's less like him than sometimes. The nose is rather.
The nose is different.
I love the flowers just dying. About to die or something on the hill. And the cow has rather a sort of weird look on its face, doesn't it? It looks a bit sly, really.
It looks a bit sly.
This is called Unlikely Angel. It's very, very soft and very, very beautiful in terms of the colours.
It's another
gentle
one, isn't it?
Yeah. Graham Crowley was really interested in the colour that he used for the background. Graham described it as being what's left in the pot at the end of the day when you've been cleaning your brushes. But he was sort of marvelling at how beautiful it was and how Ken had been able to use it in that way.
Oh yeah, it's interesting. Coming around the second time, I think the first time I was looking at them, I saw more of the bizarre element. Now I see more of a tender element.
Yeah, there's a lot of tenderness in them, I think. And there's also, I think it was also Graham that noticed that there's always a lot of drawing or working going on in them, the use of hand. And there is here. I mean, what is it? Is it writing?
Yeah.
Is it painting? Is it drawing? Probably drawing, isn't it? Because you see a lot of that occurs, and it's not surprising considering
because he is. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually.
That's what he is.
And that feeds into it.
To us.
And then you got this wonderful one.
Yeah, this is a really quite a large one from the 60s.
I think, as we were saying before, it's lovely the way that that dog, its head just changes colour at the end.
Changes colour, and then maybe bounces off the detached head above it.
Yeah.
Right, and you get that sort of movement through, and the yellow is much more knocked back than it usually is in the paintings from the 60s, isn't it?
So you always had them with a strong yellow.
Yeah, they seem to. Yeah.
Fascinating. And I think I certainly just painted myself. I just really liked the use of the paint here. You can see all these lovely different colours.
Yeah.
So nice to see how they all look on the canvas. And then the bright blue dog head. And then
the dog head's phenomenal. I mean, the other dog we saw has got a black eye, hasn't it? This one's got a sort of burnt, very dark red type of. And I like the sort of elements of like detached arms, right? And the fact that the arm doesn't join in the arm up here and the head, and they make it work, don't they? That's sort of
they do. So
key elements.
It's very strange, but it does make it work. And it appears. I think we were discussing whether or not that's actually the painted over. Really interesting.
That one could be, couldn't it? Whereas the other doesn't look as
no, exactly. Fascinating. So I find it really interesting. Been wandering around that paintings that seem so sort of psychologically charged and quite intense in some way. We've been spending a huge amount of time laughing.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of humour in them. It's really, and it's interesting because James Fisher, who probably knows a painter, he wrote an article. He's written an article for Terps Banana that's in the current issue, and he's just written about the humour within the work. And I think people have recognised that before, but I don't think anyone's ever written about it. And it really is there is an element of that within them. They're not jokey things. I mean, there's a hugely serious element to lots of them, but there is also humour. You can't deny there's real humour in them, and sort of joy of life.
I think we're just talking. Because the way the dog's arms, or the dog's legs have been done rather, but they're sort of waving around. You can see them waving around and sort of chasing them out, and it's just so. It's sort of humour as well as a kind of sense of joyousness.
There is a joyousness.
There's a joyousness to them.
Yeah, joy of living.
Yeah, exactly. It's brilliant.
Buckler.